And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bigfoot Odyssey's Sunday Encounters. I'm your host. I'm supposed to be your co-host, but I guess I turned out to host this one. Terry, with me as always, producer, co-host Daniela. How are you doing, dear?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I think we've got a pretty good show for you guys. It actually may be a long one. Our guest coming to us. Are you're in Oregon, Maggie?
Yes, Oregon.
That's what I had remembered anyway. I talked to a lot of people, but I remembered you said Oregon, and you've had ongoing experience, or you had an ongoing experience for 9 years, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Well, before we get into all that, just want to remind everyone, keep it clean for us in the chat. We do greatly appreciate that. There are kids watching, so we're arguing, bickering back and forth, and if you can refrain from discussing other researchers, we would appreciate that. It always ends up splitting the chat, and it turns ugly. So we greatly appreciate you guys doing that. So, Miss Maggie,
Yeah.
Your husband was going to join us, right?
He was, but he hasn't stepped in yet.
Okay.
When he steps in, he'll be probably eating.
Well, why don't you just start us from the beginning? Before, have you always known about Sasquatch? Did you grow up with it, or is this something that just kind of came to you?
Well, I grew up in Washington with a lot of the First Nation people, and it seemed natural for me being part First Nation myself. And, Mother always referred to, and the people there a lot of times referred to, he who is hidden in the trees. And Mother always called him Skookum. But she also called him Abominable Snowman, and so it was kind of like all mystical to me. I didn't really get it. Even looking at the First Nation baskets from there where it showed a deer and then there was a Bigfoot on it. And but and then I kind of grew up with the idea that there was something out there, especially after the 60s. And I believe they had a man, maybe I keep thinking it's in Washington, but that's probably my imagination. And he put out a store or some kind of a place where people could seek knowledge. And he had footprints and this and that. Seems like it was up by Mount St. Helens or something. I don't recall the location, but that's when it started really getting in my brain. And, but when I was a kid, I'd sleep out under the apple trees all the time. Never bothered me one bit. But when I got married, I moved out into the forest, and it was the weirdest thing. I had never really thought about Bigfoot, but there were owls and coyotes, which I'd never heard before in my life. So that pretty much scared the tar out of me. And I was a young wife, cheap curtains, and I had to have those things pulled every night. And my husband would say, "Why in the heck are you doing that? We're in the middle of nowhere." And I said, "Because Bigfoot might be looking in." And it just kind of started there. And then I had my children. And I guess from my childhood of hearing about the giant that hides in the trees, I would tell my children, "Now don't go out in this acreage because I don't want you getting caught by the hide-a-behind." And that became a big deal for us because we did live in a wilderness area. So yeah, that's come down through my family is the hide-a-behind. But I really couldn't make myself truly believe that the creature was there. Not really.
Never noticed any signs or anything like that?
Not as a young wife. It was not until after I moved to northeastern Oregon that I was getting possible signs. And still, I was so naive at the thought. I mean, I just had this innocence about nature. And I mean, I'm realistic about nature that we think it's beautiful, but it is not beautiful. It's a survival situation. But still, I was never afraid of it. And I got over there in the wilderness, and that's the first time I ever heard one scream. And I made myself believe that it had to be a cougar or a crane or, blue heron or anything but that. But I ran myself all the way to the house. And then it just kind of progressed off and on through the 12 years I lived over there with owls. I mean, one night I was out sitting on my porch and it was dark and it started owls hooting down the road and it came up past my house and 5 owls had called all the way up. You never hear of that. Do you ever hear of that? I've never heard of owls just start calling. I mean, sure, mating season, you'll hear the female owls higher toned. These were all the big ones.
We did a documentary with Mike and Dee in North Mississippi, and they talked about being surrounded by 8 or 9 different owls in one spot. And I think for the most part, barred owls are pretty territorial. You don't usually find them really close together, but it's known to happen. I mean,
yeah, these were great horned owls, and it probably was because they start calling for mates and early in the fall, I mean, and then they go on to have their chicks in the spring. But that was weird. And then the red eyes I saw on the other side of the apple tree that were 15 feet and 10 feet up in the air in this old Macintosh apple tree. And I thought, oh, it's a couple of raccoons. But they were big red glowing eyes. And I'm not to say that that's a Bigfoot. It could have been 2 owls sitting up in the tree, just a little bit one on top of the other. But I've never known owls to be like hanging in apple trees. And it was enough.
Owls to have red glowing eyes. I've never known anything to have red glowing eyes other than a buck deer will have orangish color eyes. But red, don't hear
well, I heard the apple tree breaking out there in this old orchard. And so I just stepped out on my porch because I'm the only one there. I mean, that I was alone there. And I heard the tree branches breaking and I thought, what the heck? So I stepped out and looked and shined my flashlight out there. And that's when I got these red glowing eyes. And it chilled me enough. I didn't stand there and just keep staring at them. I mean, I had cougar in my yard and bear, 250-pound bear was killed there. I wasn't ever afraid of anything, but those red eyes. And then a few years later, this scream up on the road, kind of probably in the forest, but it sounded so close. And it sounded like something screaming with blood in its throat, just gargling blood. It was just this really... It was loud enough and horrible enough that my friend I was talking to on the phone could hear it through the phone on the front porch. And I took off in the house then. But I blew it off. I always blew it off. I never took it serious. You live, and you're 60 to 100 miles away from town. You're not going to be making up things in your head or thinking about things that are going to scare you in the dark.
Right.
But after that, it was just kind of watching my surroundings more. And I found a dead deer laying in my yard. I come home broad daylight, and we have mule deer and white-tailed deer over there, and they're pretty large. The does are even pretty large. And I come driving up there into my yard by my chicken house, and there was a doe laying there without one mark on her. There was no scratch. There was no claw marks, no teeth marks, there was just one slight bit of saliva that I thought that I could see on her. And me, I'm just going, oh my God, the poor thing ate too much chicken food and now she died. I mean, it was the weirdest thing for me to think that, but she didn't have anything on her and she was fresh dead. Something had done it broad daylight, 2 p.m. in my yard. And I got out and was looking at it. And then I could just feel every hair on me stand up, and I'm going, oh my God, I'm standing over something's dinner. And I got in the house, called the
What
game people. Go ahead.
I was just going to add, any notion or idea that it might be one of these creatures?
Not until now. Not until now. Not until after this 9-year experience did I ever start putting all of these little signs together that maybe I had been walking with them the whole time. Maybe they'd been watching me right there. And I was always quiet. I had 3 dogs, so there was nothing that could. I mean, generally, animals stay out of your yard, really, if there's dogs around. And I just let them in and out and back in at night, and not let them run around or do anything. They were my alarms, And but the border collie would go over. He'd get his hackles up and he'd go over to the door. I wouldn't have heard nothing out there, and he'd be at that door, sniffing that door and growling. And who knows what was there, but something was there that he could smell through that door. After that, I would leave my front door open at night in the summertime. I just didn't think about being in danger there. Even we had cougars and coyotes that tramped through that. I mean, I saw cougars on the way home from work all the time, and bear too. But I started getting this premonition of a big man standing in front of my door that looked like he had long hair and a perm. But it didn't look like hairy Bigfoot or anything like that. But I told my girlfriend, I said, I think that means I better start shutting my door at night and not being careless, because it was coming to me for some reason. But it wasn't until 2009 that I had, and my husband had, the other experience that turned out to be, the real thing. And it's still shocking to this day. In fact, last night, I don't know if it's because I was hyped up about the show or because he watched King Kong or what, but I had Bigfoot nightmares all night last night. And it kind of creeps me out to be having them now. I've been doing it this last couple of months. And it really bothers me that I've been having these dreams when the last time that when we had our encounter was like 2017. And then we moved in 2018. We were there 9 years with this creature or creatures. We heard, it started out so innocently. We moved there to be like camp hosts. And it started out real easy with at first it'd be 30 days trial. Then it was 60, and then they said 90, and then they never said anything. It was just like, we fit in so good. We just stayed there, and it ended up being 9 years before the gig was up. And we went down in the forest. We didn't notice anything except how nice and clean it smelled. But then we built what we called our catio on the back of our fifth wheel, and so that we could protect our cats from all of the dangers of the forest. And we made it big enough so that we could barbecue out there, because we like cooking outdoors all the time. And then that's when the smell started. And I go, well, my husband would say, what is that? And I said, well, I think it's a cougar kill. It's not unusual, it's the forest. And but it didn't just happen like once and linger and go away like a dead deer. I mean, they decay pretty darn fast in the warmer weather. But this happened, let's see, that was in October. And by that time, and we started smelling it pretty regular when we were cooking dinner. Well, we'd been taking our fruit that we, sometimes it would go bad or we'd get some at the store that didn't look so good. We would take it out to the edge of the forest in this undeveloped area and just kind of drop it over for the squirrels and the birds. And we're not sure, but we think maybe that was part of the lure besides the smell of the food. That we're bringing them up. And then there was always a whistle. And it would be just one straight long whistle. And if I whistled at it, it whistled back.
The same type of whistle?
Yep, exactly the same type of whistle. If it went and I did it back, it did it to me.
So what'd you think it was?
I thought it was a bird. I thought it was just a sweet bird, but there was only ever one of them. That's the weird thing. I told my husband the other night, I said, there was that whistle. And he goes, yeah, it was probably a bird. I said, but there was no other birds around, all different directions, making those noises or calling back. So that was a little bit off whack. We went down into the forest. One of our first trips down there, we had a Kubota. We went down on that, and we came across a carcass. Everything was gone off of it. There was hind legs. Of course, there was no front legs because you know how they're attached to with just ligaments and tendons and stuff like that. So they're bound to be gone, but the head was obviously ripped off. And why do I know that? Because all of my family were hunters. And I helped my brother do, he got his deer, I helped him, dress it. So I know how it looks when a head's been cut off or tore off or broke off, and how the bones look if they've been broken in half. And here it is, laying in the middle of the road. And I said, oh my God. And we had this odd neighbor gal. And I said, oh my God, she poached something. She brought it down here to dump it, And I looked it all over, and there wasn't any knife marks on it. When you take the ribs and take the meat out from between the ribs, you're going to nick that bone a little bit. That wasn't what was going on with that. That had been chewed off. The meat had been, you could see where teeth had kind of chewed off, and there wasn't pointy, like, dogs leave little canine marks, and I couldn't actually see any of that I recall, but I wasn't looking for it to be anything but somebody had poached a deer and dumped it down there. But it freaked me out thinking back on it, how that head had been ripped off and broke off. And the back leg had been broken on it in between the knee and the ankle. Wow. And so we just got rid of it, took it, got it out of the way, because there was a lot of folks that would go down there and visit that place. And so that creeped us out pretty bad, just on general, because we'd had this gal come in there, and she snuck in with a camouflage vehicle, and she ended up stealing a lot of firewood. And finally, we had so much different oddities happening down there, we got a little camera and set it out in front of our place so we could see at night people coming in or out or what was going on. Well, Christmas rolls around and there's snow and it's cold, but we still have to go do our chores. We're all dressed up to go to Christmas dinner, and all this talking and laughing and everything started happening down in that forest. And we were up on the hill from it, most of the area there, so it all come uphill. We could hear everything down there. And there was all this talking and laughing and carrying on, and we're like, oh my God, she's down there stealing wood again, or partying, because she used to party down there. And so we took off on the Kubota, and I'm not kidding you, not one bit. Here we were dressed up for Christmas dinner in that Kubota, and we were going all over. There was a lot of miles in road and trails to go over in that place. And we would go one way and we'd hear it up above us. And we go, okay, game. So we go up there, nobody there. And we did that for an hour and a half, trying to find who was in there laughing and giggling. And I said, well, she knows this mountain because she grew up on it. So she's just gaming us. We got to go to dinner. Let's just go lock that gate and lock her in here. If she's got her Kubota down here, too, she's going to be locked in. She ain't going to get out. It's going to be parked there. She's going to walk home. We got back from dinner. There was nothing there, just a closed locked gate. So we think after digesting all of this through the years that what we were hearing were actually Bigfoot talking and gibberish and laughing. And through the years there, we heard children laughing down there. It would be sundown. The forest got really dark. Before it was dusk on the hill, it was dark in the forest. And we'd hear these children down there. So my husband would go get the Kubota and he'd run down there by himself. Never found one person down there. They had different get-togethers there. And one night he said, there's a woman down there. She's drunk. And she's screaming in the woods. I got to go down there and check. And he went all over that forest, and he never found person one down there. But there was this odd stuff you could never put your finger on. So, and I'm kind of leaving a lot of different detail out, that just trying to hit the highlights so that you guys kind of get the gist of what we went through, so I don't take a huge long time over what your normal broadcast would be. But
well, I didn't realize Daniela has a show after this, but you can always come back. We'll have you right back next Sunday if you don't mind, showing up for us.
Oh, I wouldn't mind. I think that my husband and I really need to be visiting with folks about this, because we have done the skin pinch test ever since we had the experience. And we had it up in our yard. We know it was in our yard because we were getting gifts on our front porch. And we think that was from all the grapes and apples and things that we were putting down over for the squirrels and everything. And I would find, I am part Irish, and I have all that Irish folklore in my head, and I go, hey, look at some little fairy in our yard. It's leaving us little buttons. And there had been a house there, and they'd pushed it in, and so there was shards of old pottery and buttons and different things that they just sort of plowed it over and covered it up. And here I'm finding these little buttons and shards of china on my front porch, and nice little rocks. And I got a marble once that was a black one with yellow through it. It was kind of modern, but you could tell it had been out there for a while. Odd little things. And one time I found an old glass doorknob there. It shouldn't have been there, but when it came around, obviously it had to be coming around. Something was coming around. There was never any noise when it was by the house, except one night my husband says, there is something out there and it's stomping around and it's breaking down the branches. I'm going to go check what it is. And he went out, and whatever it was took off. It took off and it got over this fence and it was gone. And he was right behind it. And I was in the fifth wheel, and I could hear, it sounded like I heard an elk going through the brush and breaking all these branches and pushing trees over and all this stuff. My husband come back and he was just winded, and I said, Jesus, I think that if I ever took you hunting, I'd put you out there to dog the deer to me, but not be because you were sure noisy. He says, that wasn't me.
Hmm.
So that wasn't me. He said, whatever it was ahead of me was gone faster than I could even see it. So then the next day he went out to pick the plums because he thought, well, maybe it's a bear trying to get all the wild plums there. And there were domestic plums there too because there'd been that house. They were all gone. They were gone from the top of the tree to the bottom of the tree. There wasn't plum one left there.
Wow.
So he just, we thought, well, okay. Now thinking back, that was probably our neighbor down over the hill that had come up and was making use of the food that was available at the time. So
You have to think, do these things store food? If they took everything, does that mean that they have the ability, to know how to preserve things maybe?
No, I don't think so. I think that they have big enough hands and things that they could just grab gobs of those and just eat them and just eat them while they're standing right there. Just if there was more than one of them there, they could have probably filled up on them.
Are you not sure? Do you think there was more than one? Do you think there was a family?
Well, with all the sounds of the children laughing, we had suspicion that there could be, and it was really weird after we had a howl there. I have to go back on this. There was a game camera put out. I'd gone down there and taken tons of photographs, me and my dog, everywhere, all over that place. Taking photographs. Sometimes I would push my camera into showing the infrared in it because I push it that far to get a macro shot. And my dog would be down here and she'd be pulling on my collar. She'd be shaking. She'd be turning and looking back through the screen of that Kubota growling. She'd be nervous and she'd be pulling on me. Let's go. And I just go, oh, come on. You're just jealous of the camera, And I get out of there. Then they put that game camera out there. And I don't know if there was, I don't know if we were blamed for it. I was blamed for it. I don't know. But there was a howl that came out of that canyon below our house that was so loud. We had our windows open. We had a cat door in there in our bedroom. And it was so loud, and I'm not kidding you. You could feel like the percussion from it. Just like the air was pushing in on the house and in at the windows. It was like it had the lungs that had to be like an elephant. It was so big. And my husband says, what the hell was that? And I said, well, my brain just went wolf. I don't know. I said wolf because that was no wolf. That was something really terrible because it was like it engulfed us. And
If you could equate it to anything, what would that be? A train?
It sounded like, I told him, I said, it's just an airplane coming into the airport and it's putting its brakes on. But it was so loud and it ended in a kind of a growl kind of thing. And we were stunned, completely stunned. And he just laid down. He can go to sleep in 2 seconds. He just laid down and was out of it. And I was laying there listening. It was about 2 minutes later, there was this howl come across a couple canyons away that was equal sound as that. And it had to be as loud to come from where it came from because it was towards Mount Hood from us. So that kind of let me know right there that what we were probably dealing with, even though we didn't want to believe it. So what I did was we finally had TV where we could watch Finding Bigfoot. I thought, well, I'm going to get a hold of Cliff Brackman, because I heard rumors that he lived around our area, not knowing for sure. And I got guided to this place in California that did kind of a radio broadcast. And they got it all set up so we could talk to them, because we needed to find out if we were going crazy. We wanted to ask somebody. And so we got on there and they said, yeah, it turned out to be kind of a funny deal. And they said, yeah, they thought that sounded like what was going on, but they have better stories to get to about them stepping over fences in the snow and stuff. So we kind of talked about it. I was nervous as heck and swallowing my cud. And well, we decided just to settle down about it. Finally decided to tell our best friends. And we prayed that they would have open minds, or at least pretend like it, because we had to tell somebody what we saw. And we don't have family that's going to believe us. They're just too close-minded. So we talked to them about it, and we watched everything that we could. And then I finally I had everything written down anyway, and I just tried to put it into something that made sense and try to get it down so that we could remember, all that was going on and everything. And that was in 16, I think, trying to remember exactly the time of the year it was. I can't remember now. I'll have to look on my notes if it was in the spring of 17 or if it was in the fall of 16, but in June of 17, we were on a road coming home about 500 yards from our house, and we saw only what we could describe as predator coming off of the neighbor's field. And now we didn't know what cloaking was until this year, but we saw this predator thing, and it was pretty big, even in the seconds that we viewed it. Now I'm thinking maybe it was a portal, but perhaps it was Bigfoot cloaked, and then he was in the road in front of us.
Now, when you say cloaked, do you think that these creatures is something they can turn on and off, or do you think it's something with their hair? What do you think about when you?
Well, I studied wolves for 4 years through Purdue University, and them and polar bear and other animals can cloak themselves. They can make it so you can't see them.
Yeah, well, you're not going to see a white-tailed deer unless it moves.
I understand.
They're. But I just mean, is it something you say they can? I'm just trying to get an understing here. Do you think it's?
Well, I'm not an expert on them by any means. I'm just
but you've seen it.
saying.
You've seen it. So
I saw this predator thing, and I was telling my husband right then and there, what the heck is that? It just looked like this watery. It looked like green watery movement in the trees, because it was trees behind this predator like thing. That's all I can refer to is that movie we saw where you could see it moving in the trees. And then there's Bigfoot in the road in front of us. And what was probably 10 seconds seems like it was 2 minutes. It took 3 steps. It turned at the waist, and it looked at us, and we saw the biggest, reddest glowing eyes we'd ever seen in our lives. And I hear people say, oh, they were blue, oh, they were black. What we saw looked like glowing coals. They looked like they were probably 4 to 6 inches apart. The head was big. The creature looked like it was probably 12 feet tall.
My goodness.
Its chest looked like it was probably about 4 feet tall. And it was running, so it had one arm in front of it and one arm back as it turned at the waist and looked at us. It looked like it was, like it made the stiff neck movement, like it had to turn at the waist to look at us. And it turned back and poof, it was gone. Just gone. And we slowly drove down there because we were freaked out. And I just kept saying, it's okay, it's okay. It's just our lights making this thing off of reflectors somewhere, because my brain wasn't going to accept the whole thing. And we talked about it. We stayed up almost all night talking about what we saw. The next day we went back, and you could see where, and we don't have the pictures anymore because my husband's camera got burned. His phone got burned. So we don't have those photos anymore, but you could see where the toe marks hit the side of the ditch and it scraped the mud down. And then the next step was like probably 40 inches from that. And then we saw where it went around this fence of our neighbors, a corner post. And there were 2 large prints right there. It sunk down in the grass, which he took pictures of. Then there was no more tracks. It was the weirdest thing. There was no more tracks. Just those.
And how far was this from where you lived?
Well, if you would have where we saw it, if you would have walked to our house, you would have walked about 500 yards to our front door.
Okay. So not far.
No, and I don't know. I just had, because it came out of our neighbor's field, as best I could tell with everything that was going on. I feel like maybe it was chasing a deer out of there, and it made a mistake. It's kind of what I felt like, and it turned and looked at us, and poof, it was gone. But it didn't look like. I mean, it kind of had that rock star look about it. Its hair was kind of hanging down off of its head by its cheeks and down onto its shoulders. But it looked like it had the mutton, whatever you call them, on the side of the cheeks. And the hair it had hair that come down to like its brow bone, but it was black, except its back looked reddish, like it had been bleached out or something. So we had found the footprint in the mud, I think about a month or so before that. And I sent you that picture of that footprint in the mud. And we had found that, and then my husband had found also a structure down there near that. So that's when we started kind of putting everything together, that we had this company the whole time and didn't know it. After the game camera was put in, after the howling, is when I would go down to do chores or do the photography, and I couldn't go past this one point. There was just something about that point. I just couldn't let myself go past this one place.
Just a feeling you had?
Yep, it was. The dog was upset about it. She didn't want to go by there. And I just felt like I wasn't welcome past this one point. And it got to the point where I wouldn't even go down to the forest anymore, because I don't know if it was the correlation between the 2 camera things going on, but I felt like I wasn't welcome in that one part of the forest anymore. And that was the part that was towards our house that was undeveloped.
Well, that's probably a legit feeling. I mean, we hear that a a lot here. Getting those feelings like you need to turn around or at least
Mhm.
not go any farther. Danielle, do you have those prints that I sent you? We're gonna take a look at the mud print, and then I want to look at the other one just to kind of, yeah. I mean, looks like Neanderthal print.
Mhm. Yeah, that we took to Cliff over at his museum, and he looked at it and said that he felt wholeheartedly that that was legit, and actually
Yes,
asked for a copy of it for to have at his museum. That
definitely not a bear. As you can see, the other one, you have that other print, Daniela.
Yeah, the other one, it's too pointy at the back, and you can see right through the middle. That
Toes.
other,
Yeah,
toes.
you see, where the front foot came down. That this is a bear
Mhm.
track. That's what I
Right.
want people to see the difference.
Yeah.
But in an actual bear track, this is a bear track because you can see the toes going through the middle where the
Right.
back foot landed, and then
Yes.
the front. Because these people say all the time, well, that's just bears leaving that behind. But if you want to actually see, you'd see that really thin
Mhm.
heel. But you'll
Yes.
always see if it's good enough substrate, you're going to see the toes right through the center of the print there. But that other one is not like that. That's
No.
a
Yeah.
hominoid track. How long was it?
He didn't take. He was so excited that he just ran to the house. He was so exhausted. He said, "I found all the stuff. There was a trail broke to this pond. The trees that had all been broke down. They were saplings and other that had been broken and twisted down about 6 foot up, just like a swath, like something had just gone bulldozing through there and just twisted them all down. And then there was the track, and he
Yeah.
had never.
Could you guess about how big
I
roughly?
don't. He might be able to, but I think it. To me, it looks like it's small. It doesn't look like it's
Maybe
really
10.
big.
It could be 10 or 12 inches. I don't know, but it's not.
Yeah,
It's an odd shape for a human foot. Absolutely.
yeah.
Real quick. I just want to acknowledge Maduro's financial advisor. Welcome, brand new member, and thank you to the time is now. Also, thank you all so much. Welcome.
So yes.
Uh, I just wanted to ask, in this 9-year period, was it year round or was it more active at certain times of the year?
It was always very active in the fall, and and even in the winter there was activity there. But I think as I thought back on all that too, that it would mellow out a bit and we wouldn't smell so much or hear so much. But I think that I don't know, I think maybe it's just my own mind going, how much food could actually be in there for them? Why wouldn't they migrate?
Starts to get scarce, sure,
Mhm.
during
Yeah.
the fall and the winter. Food does, but who knows what these creatures
Our
eat?
our
Mm.
all right, I know that our deer population disappeared out of there. And we didn't have a huge deer population, but they started disappearing out of there, and there were visitors that came there and said, "Oh, I found a whole bunch of bones down here," and blah 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 blah. And I would just say, well, we are a forest. We have everything in this forest that any forest has. It's it has cougar, it has bobcat, coyotes. We saw it all, except we didn't see him until or her, whatever, until in 2017. So the the chitter chatter. I mean, when I'd be down in the forest taking photographs with my dog, we had a lot of visitors that were foreign visitors that would come in to see this place because it's kind of getting itself on the map. And I thought, well, the gibberish I was hearing when you're down by a creek and you got these tall trees getting a little breeze in the top of them, you know how sound carries. Well, if you're a hunter and a woodsman, you kind of get the idea of how the sounds carry and stuff. And so I thought perhaps it was foreigners chitter chattering up above me or along the creek or something, because I'd hear all this. Sorry for any foreigners listening, but it sounded like gibberish. But I wasn't going to be thinking Bigfoot. I was thinking foreigners whose language I didn't understand, and that they were enjoying the forest, and then I'd be popping into the Kubota and taking off.
Danielle's not offended. It's okay. We know she's a foreigner.
Well, so is my husband. So but yeah, so we heard lots of children laughing. And the other thing, when we first moved there, we would get these howls that were just god awful howls, and they were like when I would watch Dracula and that, I go, God, how the hounds of Baskerville get here? Because it'd be just god awful howling out of the canyon. And it would last a little bit, not a long time, and all the dogs around the whole mountain would start barking their heads off. And
you've heard cougars before, right? So you're sure that those weren't cougars.
No, that sound wasn't a cougar. No, I've heard cougar screams, and I've heard vixens, the female foxes. They scream. They have a god awful scream that they'll put out that'll make your hair stand up on end. But it wasn't wolves or any of that kind of stuff. So, of course, we're still questioning what we heard. We're not experts on it, and we're just trying to get our story out there.
Sure.
This happened to us. This is what we heard. We're comparing it to what other people are putting out there, and just trying to get the story stuck in our heads the right way, and kind of get a little bit of relief out from sharing it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Most people do. But what I wanted to say was you had to feel at least a little bit confused, if not concerned, before you had seen it, about all these strange things that were going on. So how did you feel once you saw it? Did you feel better? Was it confirmation?
It was totally mind-blowing, because we tried to figure out if that scream that we heard, it was like, it felt like it shook the house. I'm not saying it did shake the house. It was just that big. So we were still whirling down from that when we actually saw, and that the experience we had with it crossing the road. And that was what gave us confirmation that scream must have been it. And the scream from across the canyon, the answer must have been it. But we basically would not try to talk about it a lot. We were just trying to find people with the same experiences we had, so we could compare notes and see if what we heard, or even if what we saw, was really what we thought we saw. Because it was kind of a crazy maker for us. All the sounds, we weren't thinking Bigfoot or any of that when we were hearing all of that. No, if that's your question, purely and simply, no. We were just going, it was like, kind of like, I told somebody I felt like I was living on Murder Mountain or something, because it was so always crazy sounds and crazy happenings. And they weren't necessarily done by people. There were tree breaks when there wasn't any wind blowing. There would be tree breaks going down, and this was a big forest. And there would be tree breaks, and you'd hear 2 or 3, and then we'd have to get a hold of the people there, or my husband grabbed his chainsaw, and we had to go remove trees that were pushed down across the roads. And they couldn't have fallen down. This is a healthy forest. We would find little other little trees that were just broke off and laid across the road.
Well, you talked about not knowing and not being for sure, especially when you hear the screams and things like that. But it's like an equation with a factor missing, and it goes on for such a long time. It gets to
Mhm.
be it can be kind of confusing, and all of a sudden here's the missing factor, and now it all makes sense. Once you add this creature
Mhm.
to the equation,
Mhm.
everything starts to make sense. So
Yes.
there's got to be a sense of at least relief in that, and at least in that much knowing. Yes, you can't know for sure, but sometimes a cigar is a cigar. 2 plus 2 is
Yeah.
4. You know,
Yeah.
some things are just self-evident.
Well, we felt that that's the truth as far as the footprint and the different little structures we were finding. You see, they had let people come in that were doing survival skills too. So, we were told to knock all those down. We knocked all those down and they start coming back. We're kind of like, okay, there's some kind of activity going on here. It wasn't until we saw the footprint in the big one that we believed that it could be from the creature, especially after we saw the creature. But um, and I get what you're saying, but it didn't make things any easier for us to know that we had
No,
it concrete when it walked across the road in front of us.
not easier, but just being able to put it together in that way and not sit there and wonder. At least now you're pretty sure that this is what this is.
Yeah.
Now, since then,
Yes.
is that when the dreams really started happening?
It wasn't until after we had the wildfires and we came here. I hadn't let it bother me really. I tried not to concentrate on it a lot. And then the dreams started coming after we moved here to this little burb. And then I was talking to my girlfriend on the phone and I looked at the closet door and in the wood grain, there's a side view of Bigfoot standing in the wood grain. And it's just like too weird. It's like, I don't want to be seeing this all the time. And it's confused me to wonder, is it a creature? Is it paranormal? Is it a demon? Is it something I should think about? Or should I just open my Bible and forget about it because some days it really creeps me out.
I stopped it. I stopped wondering what they were and what they did and how they, we just heard so many things,
Mhm.
and just to
Yeah.
where it didn't matter anymore. All that mattered is that they were out there.
Yeah.
Even though for all this time you were there, they didn't hurt you in any
No.
way or
No.
anything, but it's
No.
still unnerving. It's still unnerving just to know that there's a monster outside in the woods around your
Right.
house.
Right. And it was so close. And I got to the point where after we heard the scream and then we saw it, we were not telling anybody, especially the owners of the place, because they're trying to make something good, and we don't want to be harming that good. But I would wait at night, and this is so weird, but I would wait for a shadow to come across my bedroom window that would block out the light, And I don't know why I would wait for that. I don't know if it's mind tripping me or what, but I always felt like there was a presence under a tree near my house of it felt like female leaning against the tree like it was a guardian. Couldn't see it, but it was like I could feel something there. And I know that sounds like I'm a bit touched, but
No, it sounds like something that you were at least having a thought that this was comforting and not there to get you.
right.
You
The other odd thing that I had happen was, and I'm not um, a person that's like, I have a great imagination, yes, but when I look out my bedroom window at night, I knew where the moon went because I took pictures of the moon all the time. So I knew it rise and it's set. And I looked out the window and through the trees, it was like, that can't be the moon. well, I thought, well, it's the moon with tree branches going through it, and it made it look like it was three orbs. And then I go, well, that's just stars and this tree branches moving, but no, these orbs would go straight in a line across from each other, and they were bright white. They weren't blue or anything weird. They were fairly big, and they would move, and one would go up to the top, and then the other one would go to the bottom, and they'd stay in a straight line. And then pretty soon it turned into 4, and 3 were across, and 1 was at the bottom. And they would move around like that. And I saw those do that 3 times, and then I never saw it again. Never saw it again. But it and that was something people said, well, we see orbs, we think they come out of orbs, this and that. And I never would let my brain go there. I just thought that can't be something, but I saw that. So now that's what started bringing in more of my confusion of, are they paranormal or are they creatures? When I was younger and had heard about them, I always believed they were woodland creatures. They were here to be guardians of the earth. They weren't going to bother anybody. I never thought that they'd ever bother anybody, and they did not bother us. They coexisted with us in a very peaceful manner. They didn't frighten us until they screamed. And I'm trying to think if it was on Bigfoot Chronicles that we heard that exact scream that we could identify as what we heard. And then that was just recently, since we started getting YouTube and stuff. And I go, did you hear that? And my husband, we played it over. He goes, yeah, that was the scream. So we knew that we still weren't imagining that scream.
Right.
Because we kept trying to, I'm a practical person, and I go, okay, it could have been an airplane. The airport's not that far away. It could have been an airplane coming in and putting its brakes on. I still try to tell myself that. And now listen to that scream. I know what we heard was what we heard. It was real. And it didn't come out and scare me or my husband like it scared you, but it still put a dent in our brain.
Right.
It's like a double-edged sword, this situation, isn't it? It's like, is it better not to know and go for those 9 years just making up excuses for what things could be? Or now that you know, is that created more stress for you? Or, is it good that you're aware now? It feels like there's it's not easy whichever side you're on.
It makes you feel, for me, and for my husband too, we talk about it together some nights, especially when we're watching your show, and we go, all that time we were there, but we both got enough. We follow more of our native ways than we follow anything else. And so when we're living in the wilderness and out in the wilderness, we're just one with it. We don't worry about the sounds because we're realists. We know that other creatures live there besides us. So we just went there without ever having a fear in our bones about anything. So I think how it has traumatized us is to make us, where our house burned down, it was in the wilderness, but it was with a whole group of other people because we still had our fifth wheel, but we were still in the forest, and we felt safe there, but we would never go in the dark farther up into the forest, up the road, up the river, over to the mountain. We don't want to be caught out with a flat tire, maybe in the dark. It has traumatized us in that fashion. I won't go camping ever again. I can tell you that.
See, that's where, to me, that it's good to be aware. And you're right, Danielle. It is a valid thought to think, ignorance is bliss, absolutely. But the reason, to me, it's good to be aware because it's true.
Yeah.
This is actuality. This is not your perception of something, of some
No.
reality. This is what's actually going on.
Yeah.
This is what is there. And I think if just knowing that, at least believing it to the core, you can prepare for it better.
Sure.
So you're aware of these things going around. You know what it is. You can. I think you're a lot more cautious with what you do. At least you're more aware of your surroundings, which
Sure.
could benefit you in many ways, especially when it comes to other animals that are in the woods.
Exactly.
But to me, it's always good. We're come to the end of our hour here at Maggie. We definitely want to get you back. Daniela's got a show in about 15 minutes on Hidden Existence. You guys go and check that out. It's anything goes with Jason, right?
We've got Michael Blula.
Oh, Mike Bluler.
Back on.
Yeah. He had an encounter very similar to mine, just about 50 miles away from where I had my happening.
Yeah.
So that's excellent. Michael Bluler is going to be on, and Jason's always excellent to listen to, as you are also, Daniela. So I'll be listening to that. Miss Maggie, we greatly appreciate you coming on, and I'll talk with you this week.
Okay.
And see if you want to get together, see if your husband might want to come and talk a little bit about things. That would be excellent, and get you back on here next week.
Sure. Maybe I can not be quite as nervous and jumpy about and scattered with my thoughts.
Understandable. It's understandable. It's a lot less noticeable when you're not showing your face. When people show their face, it's really a lot more noticeable. But you were fine. You did great, and we certainly appreciate you coming on, talking about your experiences. Hopefully, you've helped someone, and we'll get into the rest of them next week. Like I said,
Okay.
I'll talk to you this week, and we'll work out a program for that. This Tuesday, we've got Drawing Bigfoot.
We have
to be announced, or what?
Yeah, I'm just waiting. It's definitely on.
Okay. Tuesday, 7:00 p.m. Central, Drawing Bigfoot. Wednesday, we're going to have Mr. Wade Bell. I thought Wade was today, and I kind of got swapped around. So Mr. Wade Bell from Georgia is going to be here with us Wednesday for Wednesday encounters at 7:00 p.m. Central. So we hope to see you guys Tuesday for Drawing Bigfoot. Thanks again, Miss Maggie. Excellent show again, Daniela.
Okay.
Y'all have an awesome Sunday, and 168 hours is not going to be out tomorrow. Just to let you guys know, it's just kicking my butt. It really is. I worked all day just to put credits in the beginning. And it's just rendering. It's just that slow. So I don't know. I'm working on it.
Soon.
That's all I can say. Soon.
People wait. They'll have to.
Yeah, no choice.
Long, a few more days.
It's close.
Close. Okay.
It's pretty close. Yeah.
Next week. Hopefully.
Until I can go through it and tighten everything up.
Yeah.
It's just it's aggravating. It's very frustrating and disheartening. And I'm sorry. I'm trying. I'm really trying. So
thank you, guys.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie. All right. Y'all have a good evening.